sent a naked photo on your phone?
No.
No?
Unsolicited, yes.
Yes, I have.
Yes, I have. Me too, yeah.
Yes, I have been sent nude photos, yeah.
So it's a pretty common thing?
It's super common, yeah.
I was working as a teacher aide in a Year 9 math class in an all-boys school with another female teacher present who was obviously leading the class. I was sitting in learning the subject and helping out with all children. And later on I found out that that was the class where the incident took place. A group of 5 Year 9 boys took photos and videos up my skirt and uploaded them to social media. They created a private group on Instagram and shared these images. The intention behind it was to gain as many upskirt photos of female staff members from the school. They later went on to take photos and videos of another female staff member 2 days later. They would put their cell phones into their shoes, recording, and put them into the aisle of the desks and make me step over them. Some of them didn't have sports shoes, so they would put it into their jackets and zip up their jacket pocket with their phone facing up, and then ask me to step over it. So they were pretty organised.
I think that there is a degree of nude photos being shared in schools. We try and make sure that young people really understand the impact that that can have on the person whose photo is being shared. It's really important that they understand that once that image is out on the internet, it can't be retrieved without a great deal of difficulty, and that can affect that person's whole life in terms of how they feel about themselves and the amount of attention, unwanted attention, that they're going to be getting from their peers.
So it says that the girl decides to send some sexy photos to her boyfriend. So is she consenting to all of Facebook seeing those photos? No, absolutely not. Sexual violence is anything sexual without consent. So in this case, this is something sexual and there's no consent involved, and so it would count as sexual violence.
As a young 23-year-old woman, I was well aware of my chances of being disrespected by these boys, and I thought it was very important that I showed my role as an adult, so I was really cautious of the way that I dressed. I took my grandmother out shopping with me before I got the job, and we picked out a whole bunch of stuff that was approved by an Anglican minister. So, I mean, it's pretty traditional, pretty formal. And I only wore a dress on 2 occasions. One was the porphyry, and the other was the day that it happened.
Has anyone ever sent you a nude photo?
Not as much as I'd like, but there we are. A couple of times actually.
And were they solicited, unsolicited?
Some were solicited, 1 or 2 were definitely not. I think that's just kind of an occupational hazard of being on the internet an awful lot, I think.
No, it was unsolicited. But, I mean, it was very happily received.
Not wanted at all.
By someone you knew or random?
Both.
Yeah, and have you got any on your phone right now?
No. I wish I did, so I could show you.
So it's really important to check for consent every single time. Even if we're sending sexual images, even if we think they're really going to enjoy that sexual image, we actually have to ask for consent first, because not everyone wants to whip out their phone and see a body part that they didn't ask for. So what's an example of how someone could ask for consent if they wanted to send a nude?
You could send a text saying, "Is it okay?" first.
Yeah, just sending a text being like, "Hey, can I send you something sexual? Are you in the mood for a sexy picture?" Yeah, absolutely.
I was told on the Monday. It had happened the Tuesday beforehand, so I'd been with the kids for that whole week without knowing. And then it was like kind of embarrassing that they had had this kind of private joke without me being in on it, laughing at me. I don't think that they could really understand. And I think for them, their actions were so minor, they couldn't comprehend the effect that it had had. And to see me so upset was really jarring for them.
Well, certainly I would define what Hester experienced as sexual violence. Although she may not have been touched sexually, she's certainly been abused sexually.
Have you ever come across some kind of situation where you've known of someone sharing photos like that without the person's permission?
There has been 1 or 2 cases between like my friends. I don't associate with them anymore because of that. It got up to that kind of level where it's something you don't want to be involved in, and you know, it's not safe. You've got legal repercussions too. It's someone's private life that you're sharing between people, and it's involuntary and unconsensual too. So it's something, as a personal view, that I steer away from.
The boys were instantly stood down, awaiting a suspension hearing with the board, and all of the boys came back from that process being suspended for different lengths of time, depending on how remorseful they appeared in the suspension hearing. One of the conditions to the suspension was a restorative justice meeting with me, which really gave them the opportunity to see how it had affected me on an emotional and a personal level. I was really happy with that clause because I really wanted this to be something that they learnt from and not just be a slap on the wrist and something that they go on to kind of think is okay. For the first couple of weeks after it happened, I blamed myself. I knew it wasn't rational to blame myself. I knew it had nothing to do with actually what I wore, but it's hard not to when that is really the only factor that brought it about, was my outfit choice.
What someone is wearing is never a sign that they definitely want to do something sexual. So if somebody's wearing a particular thing, it doesn't mean that we can take sexual images of them or talk to them in a sexual way or try to do sexual stuff with them. We still have to ask for their consent.
We encourage the use of technology. What we do need to ensure is that they are critically aware of what they should be looking at on screen, and parents need to be aware of what their children are looking at on screen, and there needs to be education for young people about the importance of that.
I still have issues sleeping. I still get anxiety, especially when I see a boy in uniform or I drive past the school. I still feel anxious. And I think I will for a long time now.
Our young people today are surrounded by hypersexual images, and I do think that that has an impact on them and can make them make some really bad decisions. Certainly that expectation that everyone's bodies are perfect or that everyone's penis is large is the sort of messages that they're getting from a lot of the stuff that they're watching. So I think that's really concerning.
The best outcome is that they learn how their actions can impact on other people, and even the smallest little thing can have a huge effect. Talking with young people about how to have these conversations, and that will be the only way that we affect change, is by talking about it and talking about it in a positive light, not as a result to a negative action, just talking about it constantly. You know when something is wrong, and I think these kids knew it was wrong, and that's why they hid it from us. And when you've got that gut instinct, you should say something. You shouldn't sit on it. You should say something.